What is up, everybody? This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com, and today we are here and we're going to be talking about some comics that, like I kind of said in the post, there are comics that are for kids, and there's a lot of people who talk about and say, comics are for kids. Well, I have to let you know that not all comics are for kids. And especially if they're based off of serial killers. So, you've heard of things like, Psycho, Silence of the Lambs. There's a bunch of other, movies and TV shows and all kinds of things based off of serial killers, interesting stuff. And today we're talking to my good buddy Fue Storm, also known as Lucifer Storm, who has written a comic called Ed Gein Demon Hunter with amazing art by Mr. Kristian Rossi. And we're gonna be talking about that. We're gonna just be talking about what it's like to do something like this. What's up, Lucifer? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm not at the day
Excellent.
job, so I'm happy.
Yes, yes. Results.
Yes, results, and I'll find the result later this week on Friday when I get my paycheck. I'll be happy too. So, man, like obviously you have your website right there, luciferstorm.com.
Yeah,
I mean, you've been on the show on my channel before. A lot
yeah.
of people probably know you, but just in case people are here who do not know who you are, let people know a little bit about yourself.
Okay, will do. I'm Lucifer Storm. I'm an award-winning independent graphic novelist from Bournemouth, which is in the south of England, right in the middle of the south on the actual coast and stuff. And I've been working in comics for geez, many years now, about 12, maybe 14 years, somewhere around there. It's a lot of people often ask, and this is something that I should really bring up more often. A lot of people often ask, like, well, what do you do for a day job? That is my day job. It is being a writer in comics. I did used to illustrate comics as well, but I decided a little while back to just focus on writing comics. And when I'm not writing comics, I'm doing things like I collect morbid curiosities, which I'm sure is something we'll cover a bit later on. I also take care of wild animals such as foxes, and I'm what's known as a murder folk musician. Some people would even say a murder folk troubadour, which is a very strange term, but I like to use it because it sounds fancy.
It does sound fancy. And we do have some people in the chat right now. Hello,
Awesome.
Jernej.
Oh, Yernej.
Yernej. Hello. How you
Hello,
doing?
good sir. How the devil art thou?
And Donovan is here. Hello, sir. Thank you for
Hello,
coming
Donovan.
by. And anybody lurking in the background, thank you for hanging out. I am going to, there is a link in the description because the thing is right now, Fue has written and created fully finished, not one, not two, but three issues of Ed Gein Demon Hunter, and number
Yeah.
4 is quickly coming.
Number 4 is about this far away from being finished, so it will literally be within the next couple of weeks. It will be finished and going to print, and then we're going to be getting together the supplementary material and stuff for the trade paperback and sending that to print as well. And I've actually got the 3 issues here with me so that people can see. So, like, it's real, it exists, it's not a figment of your imagination. And look, they even have different covers to let you know that they're all real and that they exist. And Kristian Rossi is a phenomenal artist who's done an amazing job at bringing my story to life on the page. Full color covers, black and white artwork. What more can you ask for?
Right. Well, one thing that you can ask for, and I think you deliver very well, which, if anybody has these issues, these are not low quality, publications. These are very well done. It's got like a nice like velvety cover. I have issue 1 and 2, and I'm looking forward to getting 3 and 4. And Lucifer knows how to write a story, so it's you're not going to be disappointed. In fact, you can even sample it if I'm right. Is that true?
Yes, that's very true. If you go to my website, and you can see the website address right there, and you sign up to my mailing list, you will get the first issue in digital format, PDF, for absolutely nothing. Just sign up, just put your name, your email address, hit subscribe, and then you will get a confirmation email welcoming you to my coven, and it will give you a link to download the PDF of issue 1, the whole of issue 1.
Awesome. And I'll put that link to your website in the thing right now. And we are going to focus on the fact that you have an Indiegogo going on as well. But
Yeah.
the link is in the description for both his website and the Indiegogo. So at any point while you're watching this, feel free to click that link. And we'll be putting it in the chat here as well. But definitely check it out. And I mean, yeah, sign up to the newsletter too, because it's not like you just have a newsletter and just sell things to people through it. You actually put some pretty good content in there. So
Mm.
it's I can vouch for it that it is worthwhile doing that. So so I just wanted to get into, we'll go actually through the campaign and show some stuff as well.
Yeah, that's
But I
great.
wanted to get into this idea of like stories about serial killers, like or true crime or anything of that realm. And like you're not you're no like you've written, when you write your stories, like there's always, even if you write like a fun happy thing, there's always some element of like twistedness that comes in um to your stories. And it's it's interesting. I don't know, for me, I'm always like definitely hit up the side of the head with it, because it's not the typical stuff that I tend to read. But when I do read it, it's like, oh wow, this is really cool. um and I just was wondering, well, I mean, it's kind of funny like asking any questions because I'm intimately know a lot about what's going on.
Yeah.
But for the people out there, like what made you decide to write a story based on Ed Gein, based on a serial killer?
Well, I think there's a few reasons for it. One of it being that I've had an interest in serial killers since I was a teenager, and as I got older, I didn't lose that interest. I just didn't focus on it so much. And then I made some friends who they were very much interested in serial killers, and it caused me to kind of like refresh my memory and learn some new things about serial killers. And I've always found serial killers fascinating because people are so quick to, we hear about someone who does something horrible and we go, that person's a monster, that person's a monster. And I can understand why. I don't think people are wrong for doing that, but I do think that it shows that there's a lack of understanding of the psychology behind serial killers. I mean, we have a phrase over here of it's not monsters that get close to children, it's nice old men. And that's because whether we like it or not, when we point a finger at someone like Ed Gein or John Wayne Gacy, what we're trying to do is we're trying to comfort ourselves to say, hey, at least we're not that guy. He's an anomaly, right? He's a monster. It's a way of dehumanizing someone. But the truth is, these people are human beings. Whether we like it or not, whether we want that to be a fact or not, and they've had rough upbringings. It is more often than not, it is a very common thing that these serial killers suffered some sort of trauma or abuse when they were younger, especially in childhood, and it's normally from a parent. And that's played a huge role in what they've ended up doing. It's damaged them to a point where they see that the only way of existing is to take a life, is to do things that other people would look at and go, okay, that's kind of unhinged. Like, why would a man want to do X, Y, and Z? And pointing fingers at people and going, you're a monster, you're a monster, that doesn't change anything. So I wanted to do a story where I showed more of the humanity behind Ed Gein, not to make anyone go, oh, I feel sorry for him, or oh, maybe he deserves redemption. I think no. I often say to people when they tell me about stuff that someone's done that's a bit dickish or whatever, is it's understandable, but it's not acceptable. What Ed Gein did was absolutely horrific. It should never have happened. And I do not condone what he did. And I don't think he deserves forgiveness. But I do think he deserves understanding. And if we try to understand the patterns and how abuse and different types of abuse can affect people and push them to these points, then we have more chance of stopping future serial killers from being born. Because we've spent many years, many decades going, that person's a monster, that person's a weirdo. Hasn't changed shit. So taking a look at that human side and going, well, look, here's the bit that you haven't considered. Here's the bit that you don't understand. Yes, he created victims of his own. And that's very sad and very tragic. And, you know, the relations of the people close to his victims, you know, that I have so much sympathy for them. You know, what they've gone through is absolutely horrible, but we need to start acknowledging that Ed Gein was a victim himself of an extremely abusive parent. And if that parent had been that little bit nicer, things may have been a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And so like what was the spark though that kind of like was like, all right, for some reason, like what hit you to be like, you know what, there's a story here specifically with Ed Gein, like what got you to that point?
I think it was mainly because my friends who are into serial killers, they're not exactly readers, you know, and that doesn't make me think of them any differently, but it just means that there's something in my life that I really enjoy, that it's hard. Like me and my friends, we can connect on music because we have similar music tastes. We can connect on movies and TV shows because we have similar tastes in that. We have similar senses of humor, which which is normally very dark sense of humor, a gallows humor. But there's just that one little thing, and it didn't quite cause a disconnect. It just caused something in me that was like, I would like to bridge that gap. And the only way I could see of doing that was through serial killers. And I just thought to myself, yeah, you know, there are books about serial killers. You know, we got books like From Hell, the unauthorized biography of Jeffrey Dahmer. I think there's one called Green River, which is about the Green River killer. But I was like, no, something a bit more fantastical. Like, you know, one of them would quite happily go to a Marvel movie, but if you got them to read a Marvel book, that would be a very difficult thing. And I thought, well, what if I did something in comic book realms with a serial killer? Would they be able to connect to that? And on more than a level of just, oh, this is my friend, I'll read the book because he's written that book, but because there's an interest in there, there's something there that makes them go, oh, that's cool. It involves a serial killer and this fantasy kind of stuff that they liked in their movies and TV shows. And that caused me to just sit there and just think about it. And I couldn't really come up with anything. And then I was just watching TV, just watching like light-hearted comedies and sitcoms and stuff, which I know I probably shouldn't tell people that with my dark persona and everything, but you got to have a bit of light, otherwise you can't appreciate the dark. And for some reason, my brain just went Ed Gein, Demon Hunter, and that just made me laugh. And I was like, that is so funny. Like, what a strange idea. And as always, it's the ideas that are normally the ones that I go, that's really strange. Nothing can come of that. They're the ones that I end up going, no, actually, hold on. If I think about it for a second, there's something there. And that intrigues me and gets me a little bit excited. And because it got me that little bit excited, I was like, I need to see where this goes. And before long, it became a full-fledged idea. And I was looking for artists and going like, look, I've got this story idea. Like, someone please work on it. And I approached several artists, and most of them were like, no, we're not touching that because we do not want to get cancelled. We don't want death threats or anything like that. And a couple, they were willing to, but their price range was well out of my budget. And then it led to me and Kristian, who had done like who'd done a commission piece for me, and I just loved his work, and it was great prices, and he was so quick, and I was just like, hey man, look, do you want to work on a one shot with me? Because that was the original idea. It was going to be a one shot comic book. And he was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, okay, it's set in the 90s, and it's about Ed Gein. And he was just like, you sold. I'm completely sold. I love the 90s. And the fact that it's about Ed Gein, I'm all over this like a rash. And I was like, awesome, like I'll punch up the script. And then I did, and went, I've got news for you. It's not a one shot anymore. It's a 4-issue miniseries. I don't care. Let's just do it. And that's pretty much everything that led to like the book becoming awesome. What it is.
That's so cool. What did you say? Jernej? Okay. Yeah. He's good, he said.
Excellent.
Thanks for everybody hanging in the chat. By the way, and we got Ronnie here, Crimson Owl Comics.
Hey, Ronnie, how the devil art thou?
Seven's here. Shalom. What's up? Thank you for hanging out. And Devontae Edwards. So if you guys and gals have any questions for Fue, I'd be happy to ask them. So just throw them in the comments. And so my next question actually for you is, I know for the most part you have illustrated your own comics, and we're maybe even a little bit hesitant to have somebody else illustrate your comic. What led to getting Kristian on board?
Yeah, you're quite right. Like when I started my career in comics, I wanted to just write them, but I learned very quickly, because at the time, like, we did have the internet, but we didn't have the connection that we have now. Facebook was just being born, and MySpace was still around but dying a very slow death. And you didn't really see people or groups or anything like that for artists or aspiring artists. So you had to go with who you knew in your area. And I only really knew like one or two people in my area. And I had hooked up with one of them to work on a couple of books. And things started off well until they didn't go well. And legal action had to be taken, which is very sad. I was put in a position where I nearly lost like all the rights to my characters and stories because of said artist, and that left a real bad taste in my mouth. And I thought to myself, I've got all these stories that I want to tell, all these characters who deserve to be brought to life on the page. I guess the only way to really do that in my position is to draw them myself, but I hadn't drawn for years, so I had to kind of relearn and reteach myself how to draw, which was a very slow, arduous process. But throughout all of it, I was like, I'm still drawing books, whether they're crap or not. I'm drawing books, and I enjoy writing so much, and I do enjoy drawing, just not as much. It's up there, but not as much. Like, I can wake up every day, and one day I can draw, the next day I don't. And it doesn't affect my mood or anything like that. If I get up and have a day where I don't write, like, it really bugs me. It really gets to me, I kind of equate it to drawing. For me is like having candy. It's a nice treat. But writing is like breathing. I need to do it. I like being alive. So I have to do it. And yeah, it did
make with a noose behind his head.
Yes. Well, that's just that's a contingency plan. But as time went on, I kind of realized that, like, there are certain stories I have that, sure, maybe I'm the right artist to illustrate them, and other ones I realized, no, I'm not. And I was hesitant, but it made my workload so large, and I already had enough on my plate. And it was getting to the point where it was stressing me out, and I had like other life things going on as well. I just got to this point where I was like, well, hold on, I started off wanting to just be a writer. We can go back to that. But like you said, I was very hesitant. But because I got Kristian to do that commission, it went so well, I felt very, very comfortable working with Kristian. And like I said, there were other artists that I approached because I just knew from the get-go that this book is not a book that I should draw. It should be drawn by someone else. It needed a different style of artist. Someone who can convey a lot more energy in their artwork than I do, because I get very perfectionist like with my artwork, and that can bring the energy down in the poses and stuff. Like I said, I approached a couple of people. Some were already committed to books. Majority of them just didn't want to do it because it was about Ed Gein. They worried about the negative connotations that were attached to it, and that people would try to cancel them or give them grief, and they just didn't want that, which I fully respect. And a couple of them, like I said, they were quite big names. I don't really think I should say who they are. But they just charged way too much. Well, way too much for me. Not for them, but for me. And yeah, it just made sense to ask Kristian, and he was the first artist to say yes. And I'm so glad it was him. He was the perfect artist for this book. And I was still hesitant because I still had that bad taste in my mouth. But once I got that first batch of pages from him, I was like, no, this is going to be fine. And it's been such a good experience working with Kristian that I ended up signing him up to do my book, Lady Satan. And I will do anything in my power to keep that guy working on books for me. And I've also had lots of other artists approach me because of this book saying, hey, man, I really like this book. I would love to work on a book with you sometime. And some of these people are people who used to work for Valiant and other publishers like that. And because it's been such a good experience with Kristian, I am so much more open to, let's bring more artists on board. I mean, next year I want to try and make it that I've got Kristian working on Lady Satan while someone else works on another book for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you've you said that it's been such a good experience working with him. Tell us a little bit more about the art and how that's developed, and how working with the artist has gone.
Well, the good thing about Kristian is he is so human. He's more human than human, as they would say in Blade Runner, or White Zombie, whichever reference people prefer. And I say that because I've met artists before who they don't really take that much time, and this is no offense to them whatsoever. Like, it's very easy when you're in creative roles like an artist role or a writer's role. It can be very easy to get wrapped up in your own stuff, and you can go weeks like neglecting that other people have their own lives, they have their other things going on. Kristian is really good at not just messaging me when he's got a batch of pages done or some inks done or whatever, but he's really good at just messaging me out of the blue and being like, hey man, how's life treating you? Like, how are things in your neck of the woods? And I find that really helps a lot. And he's got a history working on published books as it is anyway. He's worked on several titles for Old Turner, such as Trespasser, Rad Rose, Void Walker, all great titles. He's also an assistant of Eduardo Riso, who did 100 Bullets and Flashpoint Batman and Eduardo Riso's Tales of Terror. These are all great books. And lots of people, they see Kristian's art style and go, that looks like Eduardo Riso. It's like, well, there's a reason for that. But his artwork, I feel from issue 1 onwards, like there's a very clear progression there. and I don't know what his artwork was amazing when he started, and I'm looking at some of the pages from page 4, and I'm just like, wow, this guy he keeps growing as an artist, and he keeps doing new things, and he's very accommodating as an artist. When I've given him scripts before, but before I punched up the script, normally I would sit there, I would come up with the story, plot it out, outline it, punch up a script, and then if I was working with an artist, I would pass it on to them. But with Kristian, I sat there and looked at his work. I also looked at a lot of Eduardo Risso's work as well, but I looked mainly at Kristian's work, and I studied sort of like, how many panels does he like to work with on a page? What does he do with these panels and the layouts? So that changed the way that I would have originally written the script. But there were still moments where I was like, in order for this part of the story to work, I've got to do stuff that's kind of, I haven't seen him do that on the comic page before. I haven't seen him work with, say, like a 9-panel grid. So I would send him the script, and I would leave little notes in there like, hey, look, I know most of the other pages, they're like 5 panels or 6, 7 panels, whatever. And these two, they're 9 panels. I imagine them as 9-panel grids. However, if you, good sir, can find a way of doing the same beats, but do it in less panels or in a layout that isn't your traditional 9-panel grid, please go with the grace of God and do exactly that. And he didn't question it, and he just sat there and he did 9-panel grids. And I was so like, wow, that's great. I've worked with artists in the past, excuse me, who, when they saw something in a script and thought, hold on, I think there's a better way of doing that, they wouldn't tell me. They would just go ahead and change it. And sometimes the changes they made didn't make it better. It actually hindered the story. It hindered the artwork. Kristian never once, well, I say never once, there was one point in the story where he said, look, okay, here's the page. I tried something different with just 1 panel because I think this might be a better way of presenting this part of the story. However, if you don't like it, just tell me and I'll do originally what you asked. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, you've just made that moment a million times better. But at least he didn't just do it and didn't say anything. He said, look, I'm going to let you know I've done that up now, and it's no offense to your writing. You're writing awesome. I just thought this one moment in 4 issues. And that was really great. And that's what I mean by, like, he's so accommodating. He's one of the only artists I know who, if there was a problem with the artwork, I can turn around and say, no, you need to redo that because that's lacking. The problem is, I've never once had to tell him in this mini-series to change anything at any stage because he is so good at what he does. And he deserves to be a much more well-known name in the comic book industry than what he is now. And he's got quite a good reputation and name as it is anyway.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've seen him on other books. I've seen him obviously on Ed Gein. And I mean, I was just looking at pages today of Ed Gein, and I'm just like sitting here thinking like, I've spoken to you about like how I've never was super like into noir type of stories, like with that like stark black and all that. But like that changed a bit when I, read Sin City. And
Yeah.
then I think about that, and then when I look at these pages, I mean, there is some energy in these things. Like it just like
Oh,
this stuff jumps off the page. The storytelling, like, I mean, he is a really good storyteller. Like every
yeah.
panel just, it's not just like pretty pictures. It's like there's something there's a narrative happening here. In fact,
Yeah.
we'll start looking at some of this
Yeah.
too. And we
Please
do
do.
have some other people in the chat. Ronnie's saying I have to find time to get Lucifer on the horror show sometime. So I think
Yes, I would love that, man.
that would
Anytime you want, let me know.
That would be cool. We got Tiago. What's up? Thank you for
Hey,
coming
Tiago.
by. Gary Holmes, afternoon all. Thanks for coming by.
Hey, Gary.
So yeah, absolutely. And so let's take a look at this. And there is a link in the description in the description and also in the chat. So you can check out what we're looking at as well. And while we're looking at that, and um, tell us, I should say, about the story. Like, what is Ed Gein Demon Hunter actually about?
So, as I've already mentioned, Ed Gein Demon Hunter takes place in the 90s. It's been 7 years since Ed Gein has died, and he's stuck in hell, living in a hell loop where he repeats one of the awful parts of his life over and over and over again. Particularly a point where he was digging up the grave of his mother. But one day he digs up his mother's grave, and instead of his mother being in the coffin, it's actually a hellspawn called Ezra, who says, "Mr. Gein, I need to speak to you. Well, my boss needs to speak to you." And before long, he meets Satan himself, and Satan informs him that a deranged demon has managed to escape hell, and this demon has found a loophole where if they can get back to Earth and connect with their original remains, because in this world, demons aren't born in hell. You have good souls, bad souls, and disillusioned souls, fallen souls. Corrupt souls. So when you die, you either go to heaven or hell. And if you go to hell and you're an evil soul, you become a demon. So this demon has gone back to Earth to try and bond with their remains, because if they can do that, they can then enter heaven. And if they can enter heaven, they can prove that God isn't infallible. And by doing that, it will destroy everything from heaven to hell and in between, the entire universe. And Satan's like, yeah, I like being part of the universe. I don't want to be destroyed. This is a real big deal, and I can't leave hell, because last time I did that, the residents of hell started a holy war in my name in heaven, and I don't want that again. So he's come to the conclusion that he needs to send a demon hunter to Earth, and that the best demon hunter he can send is a serial killer. I mean, what better person to go after a deranged demon than a once deranged person? Send a maniac to catch a maniac. So he sends Ed back to Plainfield, Wisconsin, where he came from, with the mission to find, hunt, capture, and return this demon to hell. He's to keep him in check. He sent the hellspawn Ezra, disguised as a bloodhound, along with him. And together they have to go hunt this demon. But in order for Ed to be able to capture the external demon, he has to first of all overcome his internal demons.
Wow. That's a cool way of putting it. And I mean, again, just looking at Kristian's art, it's just, like I said, I mean, the storytelling is just immense in this. The pages just flow so good.
They pop. Most of his stuff like that he's done for Alterna is in color, and it pops, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Yeah. What he's been able to do with black and white is just something else. And I've always been a sucker for black and white artwork and black and white books, and I deliberately wanted this book to be in black and white for that reason, and also it brought production costs down as well, because you've got to work within a budget.
Yeah. And so you have had 2 successful Indiegogos so far. Yep. And this is the third, one, and it's bringing it to, this is going to be the finished book. So tell us a little bit about this specific campaign.
Okay, so with the first campaign, we were just doing it for the first issue. We kind of hit it big, but with a very humble goal of £666, which I did very deliberately. And that went really well. A lot of people were very eager to read the book, and the feedback that I got from it, they absolutely loved it. I'm still getting feedback now from people who've just read the first issue alone. They're like, wow, this is great. We then went on to do the second campaign, because we fulfilled the first one so quickly, because when we launched it, most of the work was done. And if I remember correctly, we launched it on November 16th last year, which is the anniversary of when Ed Gein was arrested for his crimes. It's also why we decided to launch this campaign today, because of it being the anniversary of when Ed Gein was arrested for his crimes. So we did that campaign for the first book. We did the campaign for the second book. And I thought, no, you know what? Rather than spreading it out over 4 campaigns, there's no need to. Let's do the last 2 issues in one campaign and give people the option to get the trade paperback as well. So, as with all the other campaigns, we've made it so that the perks are mainly different versions of the book, like a digital version, a script book version, print versions, the catch-up bundle, just in case you missed some of the other issues. There are add-on perks, which includes a t-shirt, and we are aiming for stretch goals, which includes such things as posters, postcards, stickers, bookmarks, and once again, a t-shirt, which means everyone who backs, if we get to that 5th stretch goal, the very large stretch goal, everyone will get a t-shirt at no extra cost in their perk, as long as it's a physical perk that they've backed. Like I said, the first 2 campaigns we went for very humble goals, because it was literally just to fulfill a single issue. So the first campaign was £666. The second one was £800, because we had to take into account there would be quite a few people who didn't get the first issue. And this time we had to take into account that this is issues 3, 4, a trade paperback, and also there are going to be people out there who will still want issues 1 and 2. So we've decided to go for a much higher goal of £2,500. I don't know what that is in US money. I'm sure we can find out later. And yeah, so far so good. The first 2 campaigns, they both funded within a couple of days. I don't think we're going to be funding this one as quickly, but I do feel very confident that we will hit our goal. Either way, I mean, considering this campaign's for issue 3 and 4, and issue 3 is in my hands right now, we're going to be able to fulfill this one quite quickly too, I believe.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. And the goal for US is 2,974, so almost 3,000.
Damn.
Yeah, we'll definitely see that get there. Man, these pages, it's hard to like even think of like what the next question is going to be when I'm like looking at these pages. Like,
I know, right? I find myself looking back over the books a hell of a lot, and it's not because of my writing, it's because the artwork Kristian has produced is just absolutely stunning. I wish I could show some of the pages from issue 4, but it would be very spoilerific, shall we say. With each issue so far, we've done these little previews. The first issue had an 8-page preview, the second issue had a 6-page preview, the third issue had an 8-page preview, and we can't do a preview for issue 4 because it will just give too much away. We don't want to spoil anything for anyone who's hanging around going, I need to read issue 4.
Yeah, for sure. So we do have some more questions and things, but I just want to let you guys know once again, the link is in the description. The link is in the for the campaign is in the chat. And also, if you have any questions, again, we would love to hear them. I think Lucifer Fue, aka Lucifer, is an open book usually when it comes to especially creating comics and stuff like that. So speaking about open books, you did talk about your morbid curiosities. Obviously you got a noose behind your head, you got all kinds of things, and you recently found yourself in the possession of a new piece of that morbid curiosity. Tell us a little bit about that.
You know, I only thought about it today. I was like, wow, it's kind of a bookend in a way, because some of the first morbid curiosities that I ended up getting was stuff like taxidermy. So I mean, I've got one close by. This is a little two-headed taxidermy chick. I don't know how well you guys can see that. I call them Be Quiet and Behave. So I started off getting stuff like that, and then I found myself not too long after that. I got hold of some coffin nails, and these were actual nails from coffins that had been buried for God knows how long, because the cemetery had to be relocated, and of course entropy kicks in and like a lot of the wood decays but the metal doesn't. So they ended up sort of like going, well, there's some coffins missing. We got to take these nails out of the ground, though. That isn't very good for the ground. So they ended up being bundled and sold off, and I ended up getting hold of some, which I was like, wow, this is something different and unique. And then that led on to me getting things like vintage medical equipment and vintage prosthetics as well. I have a absolutely beautiful, you wouldn't be able to tell, but it's a vintage prosthetic arm circa 1950, and yet it looks so new. But my latest morbid curiosity that I managed to get hold of is a brand new, unused coffin, which is fucking massive. It's taller than me. I'm about 5'8", 5'10". This thing must be like 6, maybe even 6.5 foot when it's on its end. It's stupidly heavy, and I've decided to call it Franklin. It's my latest friend. I have thought about repurposing it, but I think it's such a lovely item as it is anyway. I mean, how often do you come across the chance to get a coffin? And it was like a once in a lifetime thing. And I thought, yeah, I've got to do it, because if I don't, then I have to revoke my name as Lucifer. Like, and that's just not on. I couldn't do that.
Yes. Oh man. And wow. I mean, I thought that was interesting, and I think you were talking about possibly turning it into like a bookcase or something, or maybe
Yeah.
grandfather clock, or it's interesting
Yeah.
the ideas that you could do with that.
Yeah, I did think like bookcase or cabinet, but it was recently that I thought, no, I think a grandfather clock. I've always wanted a grandfather clock, and trying to come across one nowadays, they're either broken, stupidly expensive, or they're like miniature versions of grandfather clocks. And I just thought, isn't it kind of like a lovely, to me, it's a lovely thing, because it's that reminder of sort of like, yeah, time ain't going to wait for you. One day you're going to end up in one of them. So get to work, write more books, seeing that clock ticking away on the
Actually,
face of
maybe
the
that
coffin.
would be a good idea. Like, turn it into a bookcase and see, like, make it your life's goal to like fill up the bookcase with your books that you've
Oh,
made.
yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. Saying that though, I used to know a guy who had a horror shop, and he had a bookcase that it wasn't a coffin originally, but it was shaped like a coffin, and trying to keep stuff on that was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. It was just not worth the energy. So I think that's one of the reasons why I was like, I'm not sure if I should do bookcase or not. But now that you say that, it's kind of tempting.
Yeah. What's up?
Hey, Pops.
How you doing? I just subscribed to your channel today, which is weird because I've heard so much about you, but I didn't know. I was like, wait a minute. I hear about him all the time. I've seen you on Alterna, and Fue's always talking about you, and I'm like, what? I'm not even subscribed to, like, how am I not subscribed to Pops? So I'll be checking out your videos soon. But what's up? Thanks for coming by. And I did want to get a little bit into a bit of your writing process. I have a few more questions. Obviously, with writing a story for a serial killer, it takes some research. So I'm curious, like, how important is research in your writing process, I guess, in general, but also like, I am curious to hear, like, I'd like the audience to hear a bit about like what was your writing process for this story like, as far as just in general, like the actual writing of it, the craft of it.
For this particular book, I mean, I'm someone who I like learning anyway. I like picking up books and learning about different subjects. Doing this book was a great excuse, like I said earlier, to kind of go back over something that I already knew about and refresh my memory. But in doing so, I learned new things that I didn't know before. So I mean, and I wasn't the only one doing the research. You know, like Kristian, whilst he was doing character designs and drawing pages, he was listening to podcasts about Ed Gein and his story and stuff. So I had to do a lot of similar stuff where it'd be like, okay, find YouTube videos, find blog posts, listen to podcasts, and pick up several books. And I found some great books out there. I didn't realize that there was a biographical comic about Ed Gein. So I picked that up off of eBay, and I was absolutely amazed by it because it taught me so much that I didn't know, that you couldn't find this information anywhere else. So the research, you know, it did take a lot of time. And even though I had already sat down and thought of the premise and the concept, and I'd started trying to figure out the plot just on a very loose level, like just building the foundations of the plot. Normally, if I'm doing a story, I try to do all the research up front. Okay. And the research isn't just about the subject matter, it's about the tone of the story as well, you know. So I'm not the only one that does this. I remember speaking to Robert Geronimo from Blood Realm, and we were talking about how sometimes when you're doing a story, especially something for comics, you know it's a very visually driven story. So you will do things like watch TV shows and watch movies that you're like, that's the kind of tone, the visual tone that I want for this story, that I want for the artwork. So you do a lot of that anyway. And then you start researching the different topics. You start asking yourself questions about the different topics and themes that you've got going on. And then I would normally sit down and go, okay, well, now I start to understand the characters better as I develop them and build them and make decisions about them. And whilst I'm creating the characters, I'm trying to think about with no idea of the plot, just the premise. I try to think of cool scenes that I want to see. And, you know, I just make notes of them down, and I tell myself very early on, not all of these are making it in, and some of them won't make sense and stuff. And maybe I'm the only one who'll think they're cool in a really stupid way, but at least some of these will make it in. And then I would normally sit down, start building the plot from the foundations upwards, and start adding the garnish to the story as I go along, and going, oh, well, hold on, there's this cool scene that can fit here, and so on. But in this instance, I kind of like had a loose plot, the beginnings of the foundations, and the research was more about, okay, does the plot fall apart, or does the concept fall apart once I've done the research? And if so, how? Is it salvageable? Is there anything that I can add in? I actually found from doing the research, there were little, what I refer to as garnish, the stuff that, like, it doesn't matter, it doesn't change the plot, but it adds character to the story. It gives the story as a whole its own voice, its own identity. Little things like discovering that Ed Gein was he would often just walk around and then just start giggling like he was a little child. Sometimes he could be sat at a bar, not talking to anyone, and then he would just start chuckling. And people thought, oh, that's strange, but it's harmless. You know, he's a bit touched, or he's a bit slow, or whatever. And it's something that he did a hell of a lot. And even after he was arrested, there was a point where he was being interrogated by police officers, and he would just burst into these little giggling fits, and it wound up one of the police officers so much that he grabbed him by the back of his head and slammed his face into a wall because it just drove him mad. So realizing that, I was like, well, I want him to giggle then. Like, that seems like it's not the most important detail about Ed Gein, but I was like, but that's what's going to make the story come to life and have its own unique voice. So I deliberately made it that every now and then there would be points where Ed giggled, and sometimes it would be for no reason whatsoever. There are other points where something gruesome will happen, and then Ed will start laughing, and that kind of makes. I found that when I was reading it back and kind of like doing like the proofreading for it, I would start chuckling because Ed's chuckling at something that really isn't funny. but you find it funny because he does, and it's like, damn, he's just a character on the page, but he has that power just by having that little chuckle. And then that ended up becoming something that was like a device to really show his progression and change as a character throughout the story. So a lot of research went into the book, and there's so much that just we couldn't fit in, and it wouldn't have helped the story. It would have hindered the story. It would have been padding. It would have been fluff. So there was a lot of I had to cut out, and I don't really regret it. And the research was worth it because who knows? I have no plans for a follow-up to this book, none whatsoever. But for all I know, tomorrow, next month, next year, in 5 years' time, I could wake up and go, no, actually, I do know how to do a follow-up. And then I will still have that information. So that would save time on research for a follow-up book. But yeah, normally the research is something that I do very early on. But this was, in this case, I kind of started building the story a bit, did the research, and went, okay, no, I think the plot works. I just got to keep certain things in mind and just keep moving forward.
Awesome. And, obviously, you and I have talked a lot about this kind of thing, but I'm curious, and I think it'd be interesting for people to hear. We've talked about this concept that is very common to writers. People give this advice often, and I'm really curious what your answer is here. The advice of write what you know. I think it's so interesting, and you've helped me actually understand what that really means.
Yeah.
A lot. But I'm curious, you're writing a story about a serial killer, and I assume you haven't killed anybody. As far as I know, even though your name is Lucifer.
Well, I haven't killed anyone, but I can't vouch for that evil fucking sock puppet of mine, Jeremy, or my evil twin, Jebediah Storm.
Okay, there you go. So I mean, the question is though, is like, for if we're as writers supposed to write what we know, how does that apply in a circumstance like this? How did you write what you know about a serial killer?
I think that is the best question I've been asked about this book, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think it might be surprising to some people because
You
obviously
actually have killed somebody. No.
multiple times. It's myself, but that's not the point. I just keep on coming back and back. I'm a glutton for punishment that way. No, I'm sure there are other people who've heard the advice of write what you know, and it's very easy for people to go, well, I know horror because I like horror stories, so I'll write horror stories. And that's not really what the advice means. It means like looking at your own life and being able to transfer your experiences into a fictional story because you know those experiences. So if you've had a friend who's committed suicide, then it's actually a good idea to look at your story and see if there's any way of tackling that experience, whether it be directly or even metaphorically. It's better to try and do it directly, but it can metaphorically it can work as well. I've had a lot of people who have been like, what is this connection? Why couldn't it be any other serial killer? And in the book, Satan says himself, because Ezra's little houseboy says, I don't think GIEN's the right person for the job. And Satan makes it very clear. He's like, well, if I send Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy out there, they don't care about the end of the universe. They're just going to think, I'm back on Earth and I've got 8 hours to kill and have some fun. Let's do this. You know, they'll be picking up young boys and young women and doing their thing. I'm sure John Wayne Gacy be like, all right, where's the costume shop? Because I need to get Pogo on the go, you know. But GIEN wouldn't do that because he was a killer who did show some sort of oh God, what's the word? It's on the tip of my remorse. He did show some sort of remorse. It may not have been to the level that most people would have liked, but he did show some. And as I mentioned, it's because a lot of what he did is because of his mother. His mother was exceptionally abusive towards him as a child, even from as young as him, you know, just learning to walk. She was very abusive towards him. And he was an undiagnosed schizophrenic. He had so many issues going on. You know, there was evidence to show that because of the abuse, he honestly thought or felt, or it was communicated to him from his mother, that she would have actually loved him and treated him nicer if he was a girl. So that's part of the reason why he did what he did when it came to his victims and stuff, is because he couldn't afford to fly over to like the Netherlands and stuff to have a sex change operation. So the closest thing he could do was make his own woman's skin suit that he could wear. Hence why in Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill skins his victims to make a suit, because he is mostly he's based off of several serial killers, but the core one he's based off is Ed Gein. And I know what it's like to have a parent that you grow up with who claims to really care about you, but really doesn't. I know what it's like to have a mother like that. So it's kind of relatable in that sense. And I guess that's where the write what you know comes into it, because it wasn't very hard to write any scenes involving his mother. Not just because of the amount of research I did, but because of the experiences I've had as well. It just flowed very naturally. And you know, understanding what it's like to be in that position, it just felt right to go, okay, I'm doing this adventure horror story about this serial killer chasing demons on behalf of Satan. And I guess it was just something that came in on a subconscious level of, it ended up becoming a story about a guy coming to terms with his mother's abuse. I mean, Ed Gein, he was there when his mother died. He loved his mother and stayed with his mother right to the point where she died. And he always saw her as a saint. He never saw her as abusive. And he died believing that, not understanding that a lot of his problems were caused from the abuse of his mother. And I think that's quite sad. And not every child that goes through that gets the opportunity to come to terms with it. And coming to terms with it is a very, very difficult and painful thing to go through. But it's still, I think people who go through that, they do deserve to have that moment where they come to terms with it and be able to look that person in the eyes and go, no, you fucked up. You fucked up big time. What's that line from The Crow? Mother is the name for God on the lips of all children. And that's so poignant and true. And I think Ed is a living example of that. And it goes to show that people like his mother, yeah, they don't really deserve that title. There's so much I could say about that subject matter, but basically, to answer your question, that's where it was me writing what I know. It was a very cathartic experience. It was never intended to be like that kind of serious, and even on the surface, I wouldn't necessarily say it's that serious. There is wry gallows humor in this story. Like I said, it was meant to be an adventure horror story, a fun adventure horror story, and I think it still is. But that was the part of it where it's like, yep, that's where I'm writing what I know.
Wow. Yeah, that that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
Well, I mean that was pretty good.
And then
So
I went out and killed a bunch of people. So,
yeah, I
you know,
mean that. Oh, you got to do your research. So,
me and my sock puppet, we just went nuts and had a good old time.
and once again, I'm putting the link, and we have uh, we here's the link in the chat. It's in the description as well, for the campaign. Definitely go out and help this become a reality. And we
Mm,
have somebody here who could vouch, and I could vouch as well. I've read the first two books so far, but
thank you,
Pops,
Pops.
Pops apparently really digs this book, and that's awesome. And I agree, it's really done well. And speaking about that pesky sock puppet, Jeremy. um, Hello, the other comic guy, by the way. Speaking of that pesky sock puppet, I was curious. Does Jeremy know that you've been writing this book about him, and what does he think if he does?
At the moment, he's on the run from the police. And I don't know why, because for the first time in his life, he actually hasn't done anything wrong. I think he's just got way too high and very, very paranoid. I told him not to sniff the bleach anymore, but he doesn't listen anyway. He's a fuzzy little narcissist, a fuzzy little sociopath. He just does his own thing, and I think he's just got paranoid about that time that he sold bootleg DVDs of Sex in the City 2. And it's just got to him. But I have no doubt he will return, and then I've got to break it to him that, yeah, I've written this book about you, Jeremy, and I'm pretty certain that the first thing he's going to say to me is money.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure the lawyers will be coming after you.
Yes, more than likely. I hope they're like little baby socks, though.
There you go. And this is pretty appropriate for Jeremy's talk. What's up, Vincent? How you doing?
Vincent, how you doing, man? Sociopaths need love too.
Yes. All right. So man, thank you for opening up and telling us a lot about what's going on here.
Hey, that's cool. We can go for a bit longer if you like.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
yeah, I
this
mean
feels
that
like it's just flown by. I mean, like, if there are any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
absolutely. So let's take one more look here at the campaign. And as we do that, feel free to put in your questions, and we'll get into that. And I don't know, like I wasn't expecting, actually. Like I almost feel bad for asking the question about write what you know, because I wasn't
No,
expecting you
no,
to go that deep, but hey,
no,
you
it's
did
okay.
it.
It's just what I do.
Yeah. Oh, Vincent says he'll be live in an hour, but wanted to pop in and say hi. Well, cool.
Oh,
Thanks.
awesome. Thank you.
So, do you know Vincent? I haven't seen Vincent before on the chat.
I maybe, maybe not. It depends whether Vincent goes by that name on Twitter and other places. Because I know some people, they have like one name, one place, one name somewhere else. But either way, Vincent, thank you for popping in, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, again, like the art in this and the writing, I mean, I can already vouch for the first two issues. They're great. I can't wait to read. I was gonna buy the third one because you do have this available, the I think the third one and the first three on your site, and I was
Yep.
gonna buy it, but I was like, you know what? I personally know this campaign is coming, so I want to finish the full story. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. But yeah, the first three issues are available on my website in digital and print formats. We've also got the first two script books as well. There will be script books for issues 3 and 4 by the end of this campaign, which is something that I wanted to do anyway because of in the past doing YouTube videos where I was teaching people how to write comics. A lot of those videos aren't about anymore, but I do plan on returning to my YouTube channel in the not too distant future and bringing some of them back to life, updating them and talking about stuff that I haven't talked about before when it comes to writing comics. And yeah, so people have various options on how to get hold of these books. Once issue 4 is done, it will be available through my website as well. So guys, it'd be great if you backed this campaign, but if you can't, then know that this isn't the only way that you can get those books. You can get them through my website, and hey, if you can't, you can always share the campaign. That does absolute wonders.
Yeah, and please do share that. And also, the like I said earlier, the you can actually read a preview of this if you sign up for the newsletter.
Yep.
So it's like if you're like on the edge and you're not sure, like, hey, is this for me? I mean, just sign up and you'll get that. You'll be able to read it and you'll have a much better idea of what you're getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole 28-page comic for nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then after that, you'll get an email from me like once a week, letting you know about creators that I've been interviewing for my blog. And I mean, the people who signed up to my mailing list, they were the first people to see any of the artwork from issue 4 of this series. They've seen a lot more of the artwork than people who haven't signed up to my mailing list. That's where I make announcements first and stuff. And I occasionally give away like free little goodies. Like a few weeks ago, gave away free iPhone wallpapers of Ed Gein Demon Hunter to people on my mailing list. And I'm always thinking of ideas of like, well, the people who sign up to my mailing list, these are good people. These are good people. They deserve a little something extra. So I've got some ideas of things I'm going to do with the mailing list that I think people who subscribe to it will enjoy. And it will only be for people who are subscribed to my mailing list.
I'm curious now. Like I'm sitting here looking at this and I'm like, oh, this is the double page spread. Okay. I was going to say, because like I see Kristian drawing this and what size paper is he drawing on? His hand looks very little to that one panel. Like
he did amazing with that double page spread. I think everyone who's read this book, one of the things that attracted them to it was seeing that double page spread, because that was the first piece of art we revealed from issue 1.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing I'm really curious. I can't wait to see. And again, like the storytelling here is just great. I can't wait to see what the cover of number 4 looks like. I'm looking forward.
Neither can I. I'm looking
Is that
forward
coming
to it.
soon, or?
Yeah, that will be coming soon. Kristian always does the cover last, which is absolutely fine by me. And with the first issue cover, he said, "What do you want on the cover?" And I was like, I actually don't know. I gave him a rough idea. I was like, maybe something to do with graveyard and demons and stuff. And he came up with, let me see, I've got it right here. I'll pick up the right one in a minute. And he came up with you lost me.
Sorry about that. I pressed the wrong button. Here you
go. So he came up with this to start with, and I thought it was a beautiful cover. The second one, he didn't know. He asked me once again, "What do you want on there?" I was like, "I don't know, but like maybe something with the demon." So he just went off and he did this lovely cover, which is absolutely amazing. The third one, I had a bit more input in and said, okay, well, like, I think it would be cool if like the shadow of the demon was like overlooking like Ezra and Ed's got this chainsaw and stuff. So he came up with this cover, which is also going to be the cover to the trade paperback, because I think this is the most appealing and best cover out of the 3. And with the 4th one, I had more of an idea because I was like, I really like the way that issue 1 and 3, the covers almost mirror each other. And so far, you put those 3 covers together and they kind of tell a story of their own. And I was like, well, if issues 1 and 3's covers mirror each other, what if issues 2 and 4, the covers to them kind of mirrored each other? So I gave him kind of a detailed description. And he was like, yes, I was thinking the exact same thing. So in the next couple of weeks, I will see it. I will at least see the pencils of it. And I cannot wait, because it's always a pleasure when he sends me, like, even just the pencils for the cover. It's always an absolute pleasure. I feel like a little kid in a candy shop when I'll sit there in front of my computer or laptop going, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, totally. Man, I can't wait. And I'm looking forward. I already told you before, like, once I get these issues, like, I'm gonna be like, all right, let's go through 1 and 2 first. And if it's not clear, like, this campaign completes this series.
Yeah.
So number 4 is the last one. You've already got 3 printed. And maybe you'll print more, I'm not sure. And then 4, how far along is 4, by the way?
To be specific, pages 1 to 20. Each issue is 28 pages long. Pages 1 to 20 are penciled, inked, and lettered. Pages 21 to 25 are penciled, and they're currently being inked. So I should be getting those inks pretty soon, to be honest with you. I reckon by the end of the week. So after that, whilst he's working on pages 26, 27, 28 in the cover, just the pencils, I'll be lettering the final, the pages 21 to 25. So I think we're looking at a couple of weeks, maybe a month at the most, and issue 4 will be 100% complete, which means the entire mini series is done. It's a whole self-contained story across 4 issues, and that's a great healthy size for what I would probably call a graphic novel.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, one of the perks for this is the trade paperback. So are you planning on putting anything else in the trade, or, like, is there going to be maybe some sketches or something, or
yeah, I'm definitely going to put in some of Kristian's character sketches. I want to show the progress of some of his pages, because getting to see his pages go from thumbnail to pencils to inks, wow, it's amazing. Every stage is just absolutely mind-blowing. I'm still looking into who I can get to write a foreword / introduction for the book. I mean, I could do that myself, but it would be very long-winded, and it would probably contain lots of information that doesn't need to be there. Like, I think my ego would take control at that point, and no one should ever pander to my ego. So I would rather someone else write the foreword. I'm quite happy to do an afterword, kind of sort of like, okay, so you've read the story. This is why it came to be and stuff. I always like it when there are art galleries at the back of the book, and other people have taken on the character. So I will probably put a call out there for people, if they want to do some fan art of Ed Gein Demon Hunter, to go right ahead and maybe have like a little fan art gallery. I've been toying with the idea of maybe writing like a prose short story to feature Ed that can go in there somewhere, but I'm not sold on that 100%. So the supplementary material, people are probably gonna have to wait and see, but there will be things like character sketches and progression of pages put in there for sure.
Sweet. Awesome. And the other comic guy says, it's looking good to me. The title alone is a hook. And I'm curious, did Kristian make the title art, or
the logo?
Yeah.
No, that was me.
That was you. Okay, cool.
Yeah, guilty as charged.
It looks good though. It's awesome.
I dig it. It definitely stands out.
Mr. Sachs should write the foreword. Jeremy should write the foreword.
To be honest,
Does
if
he
he
even
did,
know how to write?
yes, badly. I mean, bear in mind the last thing Jeremy wrote was a death letter to the Thunderbirds movie. Not anyone who starred in it or the director. It was to the actual movie itself. So whilst I'm tempted, I think it's best I check out my other options first before I settle on him.
That would be like hilarious if you put if he had like a blurb on the back. You could just imagine what
It
Jeremy
would
would
just be
say.
him insulting me, trying to
Yes, that's
convince
what
people that I should be cancelled and scalped.
oh my gosh. Jeremy knows how to use a hammer. That's true.
Yes, yes, my shins can testify to that.
Oh man. Well, that being said, man, I'm looking forward to this thing, reading the whole thing and you know, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of other people are too.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to let people know before we get going?
No, I think I've pretty much covered everything. Like I said, please, feel free to sign up to my newsletter because you will get a free digital copy of Ed Gein Demon Hunter issue 1 if you do that. If you cannot back the campaign, but you think it's worth supporting, please just share the link around and you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I will return to my YouTube channel soon. Just look for Lucifer Storm, the Lucifer Storm, or the real Lucifer Storm. Don't accept any substitution whatsoever.
Yeah, and I definitely can vouch for, if you're an aspiring comic creator and you want to learn about writing, like check out his YouTube videos on writing. There's not a lot out there for writing comics, but his stuff, Lucifer Storm's stuff is very, very good, and I've certainly learned a lot from you. So, um, I definitely recommend it, and I recommend the Indiegogo. Definitely check that out for some a good example of how a good comic is written. And with that being said, the link's in the description. Check it out, and I think that's it. Thank you, everybody,
Yeah.
for hanging out with us and watching, and people who are watching on the replay, people who are watching, just lurking behind the scenes. Sometimes we like to lurk behind the scenes too, so nothing wrong with
Oh,
that.
yes.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on, and we'll be
Anytime.
talking shortly, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Take care, everyone.